Chapter 7. They were walking towards their first challenge. Roan was leading the group, as he seemed to be the natural choice for leader. She was walking in the back with Callady. Callady was excited and was prattling on about how her oldest brothers and sisters had loved this part. She knew she should be listening for helpful advice, but found herself distracted by the 3 black cloaks in the line ahead of her. She knew one of them was the person who had been asleep by the fire, but which one had it been? They were all unhooded, and she could see the closest one was one of the twins. Ahead of the twins was the handsome boy Grade. She had heard Roan call him that, and the last was Roan. She doubted it was the twin, though she wished it was somehow. That would be less embarrassing. But as the twins were always together, it must be Grade or Roan. Almost tripping, she lurched forward. Callady laughed in fun, but quickly covered her laugh with concern. "Are you okay, Tilly?" Yes, she blushed, grateful no one had seen her. No one had seen her but Callady. Looking ahead, she noticed Grade get back in line. "I'm sorry," she said. "What were you saying?" Slightly puzzled, but happy to continue, Callady restated, "I was saying, Roan asked Father for a travel blessing, and I also—" She interrupted Callady. "Roan's your brother?" Callady stopped and looked at her. "I told you that." Not sure when she had been told, but knowing their conversations had been few, she had to assume it was sometime that day, because she did not remember it from last night. Callady continued talking, but she didn't hear any of her words. Callady stopped walking, which brought her to an abrupt stop. "Tilly, are you okay?" Cold, familiar fear swept over her. She had not been listening, and that was inexcusable. Eyes wide, she effusively apologized. "I am so sorry, Callady. I did not sleep well, and I'm not feeling myself today." She could feel the tears welling and angrily blinked them away. How could she be so weak? Unexpectedly, Callady reached out and hugged her. She bristled. Stepping back, Callady looked softly into her eyes. "Tilly, it's okay." Callady laughed. "I talk all the time. My father says they should have named me Brooke, because I never stop babbling." She nodded her head, trying to absorb what Callady was offering. Callady grabbed her hand and pulled her forward to catch up with the others. "Stop calling me Callady. My friends call me Cal." Page break. They had caught up to the others and were now circling their first challenge. It was a very simple pattern to solve using shapes and colors. They simply needed to fill the pegs with the missing pieces. She felt smug looking at it, but did not offer to help when Roan asked for volunteers. Asking for volunteers again, Roan reminded them, "Remember what Divya said. We cannot fail at this level. We simply stay until we get it right." Harma stepped forward and looked expectantly at Larsh. Roan and the others laughed. A small boy, who couldn't be older than 12, stepped forward. At this, Roan beamed. "Good job, Hal." They made several simple mistakes that made her wince, but eventually they completed the pattern successfully. She wasn't sure when Divya had arrived to observe, but upon completion she gave each of them a yellow ribbon to fasten to their white sashes. Clipping it on, she couldn't help but wonder how their time would compare to the other teams. It annoyed her how much praise the others gave Harma, Larsh, and Hal for such an easy challenge. The next challenge did not prove any harder. The twins and the tallest boy volunteered to solve the problem of where the hidden acorn was under their self-rotating mugs. They needed to guess correctly 3 times in a row, and it took them more than 2 chances to get it. But eventually, everyone was given a green ribbon, and they moved on. She should have been relieved by the simplicity of the challenges, but found herself frustrated instead. Callady tried to get her to participate in the 3rd challenge, but she did not want to. So Callady and 2 of the boys volunteered. Their task was to connect the pile of sticks so that all were the same size before the sand ran out of the hourglass. They did pretty well, but still required a second chance to make the time allotment. Orange ribbons were given. Divya announced that level 1 was completed. She wondered again how quickly the other teams had received their ribbons. Her answer came as they made their way to the level 2 challenge. She could see at the bridge that they were the last to get there, and she seemed to be the only one frustrated by that. Her team, as well as the others, were laughing and talking to each other gleefully. Trying to match the others' energy, she had a smile on her face, but her eyes were leery of the games and the attitudes. 3 bridges, made of ropes and planks, led to their own wooden towers. The bridges were fastened to the ground with pegs. All team members were to cross the bridge and get to their tower. Each bridge had different rules, but the first rule was the same for all bridges. Only those who had not participated in a challenge could organize the crossings. Dread and relief came simultaneously. She knew Grade and Roan had not participated, but neither had she. Both teams had already started, and the red team had 7 members in the tower, with 2 of their pegs still intact. The blue team was the middle bridge, and she could hear the 3 in charge discussing their next move. They had 4 of their members in the tower, and all of their pegs, but upon looking at the pegs, she could see 2 of them were about to pull out. Why wasn't the blue team looking at the pegs? 2 of their members ran across, and immediately the 2 pegs popped out of the ground. A gasp went out from the towers where the teams could see what was happening below them. Only the 3 who had not participated could talk, and of the remaining 6, 3 could speak. A gasp from the red tower let them know they had lost more pegs. Looking to see how many team members were left to cross, she saw only 2 left. "Tilly, we need you." Roan beckoned for her to come to the front with him and Grade. Standing on the edge, she could see the bridge had a 4 or 5 foot drop, but the drop would be 10 feet at the tower. Nobody would die at that height, but it could result in a broken bone or 2. Roan and Grade had the instructions and whispered to each other when she got close enough to hear Grade saying, "The pegs on the blue team are weaker than they realize. They have only noticed the 2 that are gone and not how close they are to losing the others." Roan nodded and replied, "I have seen that. They have their youngest ones in charge. What do you think we should do?" She was surprised at their concern and wondered why they weren't focusing on gaining back time instead of worrying about the other team's obvious oversights. Exultant cheers let them know the red team had completed the challenge. Trying to focus on the instructions and knowing they had not even started their challenge, she was frustrated at the lack of support Grade and Roan were giving. Shouts from the blue team brought their attention to the final 2 blue members. Young and scared, they had watched 2 more pegs come up when the last blue member crossed, and they knew only 2 pegs held the bridge in place. Panicking, they did not heed the shouts to stop, but raced each other to cross the bridge. Grade dove for the first peg, grabbing it as it pulled from the ground. Roan threw himself at the other peg, almost being pulled over the cliff as it twisted forward. Callity and the boys from her challenge rushed forward to anchor Roan and Grade. The terrified last 2 members of the blue team recovered and ran forward. Shouts of gratitude rang out from the blue tower as they scrambled to the waiting arms, ready to bring them in. Recovering from the exertion, Roan, Grade, and the other 3 let go of the ropes as they lay sprawled on the ground, breathing deeply. It had all happened so quickly. She was so focused on the challenge that she had not considered the other team. All the challenges had been so annoyingly easy. She hadn't been expecting one with actual risks, even though she had seen the drop-off. How quickly the 2 young ones could have been hurt. They should have planned better and not left the youngest in charge. Even as she thought it, she knew it was wrong. No one knew this task would be left to those who hadn't already participated, and even if they had, she was being callous. Divya arrived, and the 5 quickly rose from the ground. "You have been most noble," Divya said, "and this may sound unfair, reward for such goodness. I wish there was another way. But Roan and Grade are now being counted as having participated in a challenge." She was gone before any questions or concerns could be voiced. Roan spoke first. "Well, I am glad Callity, Jasp, and Pete were not penalized as well." She was astounded. What an ignorant response for just being penalized unfairly. Roan continued, changing her annoyance to panic by saying, "And I'm glad we still have Tilly to get us all across." Picking up the instructions that had dropped, he offered them to her. "I have no concerns. You will get us all across." She had plenty of concerns for all of them. Afraid to look, but needing to know, she turned to see the blue team waiting respectfully. Unbelievable. She mocked herself for not helping the blue team, for her contempt towards her teammates, and for her conceit in thinking the tasks were beneath her. She admitted to herself that she deserved this punishment, but she was furious at herself that the others would have to pay for her mistakes. She took the instructions and dropped her head to try and shield her face. She knew she was being watched from every direction and could not escape the shame she knew she deserved. "Let's give Tilly some time to make a plan," Roan said, guiding the group several steps away. She could see someone to the side of her, but she was too upset to look at them. "You are not empty," she heard Grade say as he went to join the others. Wait, what did he just say? She felt heat rise to her face, and then she felt her body go cold as she realized it was Grade who had heard her talking to herself by the fire. She wished it had been Roan. The tall boy was telling a joke, and the others were laughing. She should have felt relieved they weren't just staring at her like the blue team was. Instead, she felt alone and afraid. Palef came to her mind. "Your self-pity is not even watering the roses, so get moving." She had wasted enough time, and 2 teams were waiting for her. Having been the last team there, she knew the last 3 to cross would be either Roan, Grade, or herself. So taking herself, Roan, and Grade out of the initial crossers, she quickly read the instructions again, ensuring she had a plan before she began. One of Palef's favorite activities had been to fill a tray of random items and then give her a minute to memorize them. After the minute, she covered the items again and had her recite how many things she could remember. Their group was taking turns sharing jokes, but when she raised her head, Roan signaled it was time to start. Reading the first clue again to ensure she was right, she asked one of the twins to walk across. She knew there would be no stress on the pegs because the instruction had been to start with the ones who looked the same, but she worriedly checked them anyway. She sent the other twin across and checked the pegs again. The second clue had said to send the one left that had something the same. 2 girls were left beside herself, so she knew that wasn't it. Many had blue eyes, but only one had blonde hair, so she sent the tall boy across. A little less sure, but knowing she had to be right, she checked the pegs. The third clue was to finish the things that were the same. Every one of them so far had blue eyes, so she felt relatively certain it was that. She decided to send the youngest, Hal, next in case she wasn't right. The pegs showed nowhere, so she sent one of the boys who had helped Calady with her challenge. Again, nowhere. Harma, Larsh, Calady, and the other boy had to get across before Grade, Roan, and herself. The 4th instruction had said to send them in order. She was almost halfway through, but worried about getting it wrong. Was it height or age, or was she missing another option? She guessed this had been where the pegs had started loosening. She knew she would get at least a loosening before a peg pulled. She had no one to consult with, so she had to decide. She would go with height. But that too presented a problem. Would it be tallest first or shortest first? She would have to make a move to know if she was right or not. Harma was the shortest, so she sent her across. She noticed the pegs loosen. Tallest or oldest, she asked herself. She decided on the tallest and sent Larsh. The pegs pulled out as he crossed. Unnerved that she hadn't gone with age, she wondered if that was right. She had Calady and the boy to get across before the last 3. If she was right about age being the deciding factor, she still didn't know if it was the youngest or the oldest first. Realizing she could not make another decision until she knew more, she asked them their ages. 15, the boy answered. 17, Calady responded, and you're doing great. Wishing she believed it, she pondered who to send first. Rereading the clue to send them in order, she decided it made the most sense to send Callity first. Holding her breath, she watched Callity walk across without strain on the pegs. Relieved, she sent the boy next. Immediately, she chided herself for not thinking it made much more sense that it would be age over height. Great job, Tilly. We knew you would do it. Roan and Grade were smiling at her as if it was over. Quickly doing the math, she realized they were right. Even if she was wrong on the next two, it would only loosen and pull 2 pegs, leaving the last 2 for her to cross. Embarrassed it took her so long to realize it, she smirked and held her hand out for them to cross. The blue team and their team cheered as Grade and then Roan crossed. She watched the peg wear as Roan crossed, but it didn't matter. They were all going to make it.